Take a look at this. This is a restored railway car that's on display right here at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. It was used as a segregated passenger car in the South from 1940 to 1960. White passengers sat in the front and African Americans in the back with a divider in between. The car is so large it had to be installed before the museum was finished. The building's walls went up around it. Museum visitors will be able to walk inside to understand the daily reality of Jim Crow era segregation. One of the most celebrated protests of the civil rights era happened in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1960. And we're at an exhibit highlighting a sit-in by black college students to force Woolworths and another chain store to desegregate their lunch counters. Loretta Lynch was born in Greensboro 9 months before that protest began. She became the first African-American woman to be United States Attorney General, and we are very happy to have her here with us. Attorney General Lynch, great to have you here.
Good morning.
You were born in Greensboro.
Yes.
And to think now, look, here's one of the stools from the lunch counter sit-ins. What does that era mean to you? What does that time mean to you?
You know, when I see this, I have a great sense of pride in those students. And when I think about that era, I think about the fact that it illustrates that ordinary people can make a tremendous difference when they see inequality. This whole museum is really a collection of the stories of ordinary people who said, we have to have equality in this country. We want the basic human rights that everyone's entitled to, which sounds small but was huge. And for me, growing up in Greensboro and then later Durham and hearing about this sit-in and my parents' role in it, I always had the sense that anyone could play a part in advancing equality.
What was your parents' role in it?
So my father was a minister in Greensboro at the time of the sit-ins. My mother was an English teacher, then a school librarian. And my dad allowed the organizers of the sit-ins and the resultant marches to use the basement of his church, Providence Baptist Church, to organize before they would go out and have the sit-ins and the marches.
In fact, there were only two churches, I think, that allowed that, and your father's church was one of them,
yes,
right?
There was another black church in Greensboro allowed them and gave them office space to plan, and in the basement of Providence they had meetings right before the marches. So it was important to him to support that movement.
You know, Gail and I and Lonnie Bunch, the director of this museum, were talking about this, and when you look back at moments like this, and yes, would I have had the courage to do something like this when I was 18 years old? And I think I wouldn't, and I think, you know, Gail and I, we got the incredible courage. But first, these four men, and then it grew day after day. There were white women college students that joined. And then finally, what they decided is they would no longer patronize these lunch counters, and sales dropped by a third, and guess what? That pushed the change.
Yes, which shows you how integral African Americans are to not just cultural life, political life, but economic life. We are all part of what makes this country great and what makes it grow. And we have to recognize everyone's contributions. These four students really had the view that they just did not want to stand for the injustice anymore. And in addition to my dad supporting them, my mother had decided when she was a young teacher driving across the segregated state of North Carolina, that for her, she wasn't going to use the segregated water fountains anymore. That was her stand. That was her view. And she just was through. She was done. And she said that this was not the America that she believed in. And of course, there was no basis for that in any event. And so that was her own private protest.
How does that influence now your role as Attorney General?
You know, when I think about what people are doing today to point out how so many people in this country still do not feel a part of the American dream or American progress. But I think it highlights the importance of the role that young people can play in this. It highlights the importance of the role of people of all backgrounds and all ethnicities can play to support these important ideals of America. So for me, it's never far from my heart.
You know, it strikes me that one of the interesting things, because you are the chief law enforcement officer, one of the things is the ability to vote.
Yes.
Voter ID laws. And federal courts of the country now have issued decisions striking down or requiring changes to voter ID laws that have disproportionately hurt minorities. Is it still harder for minorities to vote in this country? You
know, we are still seeing, unfortunately, some situations where it is harder for minorities to vote in this country.
How are people trying to make it harder for them to vote?
You know, I think it's also looking at making it harder for young people, for elderly people, but in particular minorities. And some of the voter ID laws that we have seen have put in place some requirements that do not accept the most commonly held IDs that students may have, that people who have certain types of jobs may have, but will accept accept other IDs that are typically not found in the minority community. Or we'll actually see in some of the cases that we filed discussions about how to suppress the vote. That shows that this is an evolving issue. We still are dealing with the vestiges of inequality and people who have trouble accepting everyone's full participation in American society. But when we're all involved, we're all stronger.
I know this was emotional, too, for you to be
Yes.
here. So thank you so much. We appreciate you being here on this very special morning. Thank you so much.